Good morning, everyone, and greetings from Columbus, Ohio. My name is Brittany Sandage, and I'm the Director of Coalition Programs here at Prevention Action Alliance. Just a few house allow you to test your audio and make sure things are working. If you have questions during the broadcast, you can use your question pane in the navigation bar to submit anything to us. We will try to gear all of our questions towards the end of the call. In addition, you will receive a follow-up email containing your certificate of participation and your CEU. If you have any problems with that, of course, you can contact us here directly at Prevention Action Alliance, and we'll get you connected. At this time, I'll be answering any questions or troubleshooting. I'm going to pass this over to our Executive Director, Marcie Seidel.
Good morning, everyone. And if you have trouble with the audio, let us know that, and we can make some adjustments here. But it's good to be with you on this January morning, a little bit out of the deep freeze and into a little bit more of a rainy, slushy, messy sort of environment. But that is Ohio, and that is January. So we appreciate all of you being with us today. The legislative field right at the moment is kind of quiet in the sense that legislators have been out of session and out of the business of working on laws and legislation since about the mid of December. So it's been kind of quiet. But there are some things along the way that we still want to take a look at and open our minds into discussing. First of all, as I kind of wanted to, in this first slide, take a look at what we're doing and looking ahead for 2018. 2018, there are three areas that I think initially that I think that we should be focusing on and giving some attention to. I do believe that with anything in this particular advocacy world, it will change and flow in different directions when we least expect it. But for right now, I'm seeing marijuana being one of the biggest things that we need to look at. As you all know, the program was legalized on September 8th, 2016, and it will be fully implemented. The goal is to have it fully implemented by September 8th of this year. So there's a lot of things that will be happening. You'll see groundbreaking, which we know has happened already for cultivating sites. We know that there will be dispensaries that will be booking locations to open their doors. And we know that there are product centers that will be taking place and building and growing and moving out to make sure that the products that are developed for this new industry will take place by that September date. We're still seeing some interesting things happen along the way. We'll talk a little bit more about that right now, but the landscape is fully moving forward, and we as prevention specialists and people in the public health need to be prepared to meet the challenges that will face us as this rolls out. The second piece that I think it was our ongoing and will never end anytime, I think, in the very near future, and that's our opiate epidemic and the concerns around that. We're seeing more and more bills in the legislature here in Ohio being introduced, and what we're seeing is they tend to move towards putting people into jail as opposed to looking and recognizing this as a disease and something that needs to be treated. So this is something that we're going to be taking a close look at and following as the year moves on. But I know these well-meaning legislators want to do something. They want to stop this wildness around this epidemic, and they're doing what they know best over the many, many years that we have been fighting drugs, and that is just let's make a law and put people in jail, and that will stop it. And we know that we need to take a little bit different look at that. The other thing that we need to look at, while we're very busy looking at marijuana and we're very busy looking at opiates, the alcohol industry is having a phenomenal day because they're flying under the radar. And they're flying under the radar with things like alcohol ice cream that just became that policy, and that legislation was just put into law and is being implemented now in the state of Ohio as of January 1st. You can have up to 6% volume of alcohol in your ice cream now. It's certainly not something that we as prevention specialists feel is at all a good move or a good direction for this type of industry to go, as it has a tendency to be very seductive for our young people. And people who may not normally want to use alcohol products could be lured in and tried on these very sweet ice creams and candies and things. So we need to take a look at that. We also know that the craft brewing industry is taking hold now. Not only is there legislation, excuse me, on the state level, there's also legislation and it was actually in the tax bill at the federal level where they're giving deference to those small craft breweries to have fewer dollars taken in excise taxes. So that makes it a little bit more available for people to spend money. We know that alcohol is one of those things that's price sensitive. So if you lower the price on things, then it's the more use of it. So we're keeping a watchful eye on these things. It's not something in the name of economic development is what we're hearing. The name of economic development. All these things are coming into place, and it's it's to the detriment of public health and the safety of our children. So there has to be a balance, and we are the balance, and we need to be on the other side of things, bringing attention to the potential pitfalls and downfalls of these types of products and legislation. Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into the Ohio Medical Marijuana Control Program. As we know, this was House Bill 523 that was passed last year on September 8th, 2016. We know then, and we'll talk a little bit about that, Jeff Sessions, our United States Attorney General, has really thrown a wrench into the legalization movement in the United States, and really has caused a lot of people heartburn, I think, in the last week or so about his rescinding basically the Coles amendment or a memo actually, and other policies that were put in place under the former administration. We're thinking that in Ohio right now, Ohio is not seeing that it is going to affect anything in the progress of putting the medical marijuana program in place in the state of Ohio. But it does cause concern for states that have programs in place, and most generally for the states that have full legalization of marijuana. And there are things to be concerned about that. And then also in addition to that, we'll talk a little bit more about, well, actually let's talk about that now. The Cole Amendment, as you may or may not remember, was put into place where it asked the federal prosecutors to do a more of a hands-off view of states that have legalized marijuana. And in doing so, they put also the federal government actually took away money for them to be able to do that. So there was no money to be able to do that. And so it's just kind of people, the states are being able to do their own thing out there now. Now that the Attorney General has rescinded that those restrictions that were put into place, the field is a little bit uncertain. And in fact, that's the thing that's creating the most concern right now, is that nobody really knows what's going on, and they don't really know where this is headed. And if you think about it, this industry is a very cash-rich industry, and a lot of people have put a lot of money into it, and they're a little bit worried now about losing their investments in it. So it's going to be a lot of back and forth talk and difficulties about this as it goes on. But we had in the Cole memo, there were 8 federal priorities that, even though they took a step back, they wanted to make sure that these things stayed in place. And if you look at anybody who has been a prevention advocate or an advocate against legalizing marijuana, you know that these 8 things have been violated over and over and over again, and no one has ever done anything about them. But one is they wanted to make sure that there was no distribution of marijuana to minors, and we know that that's always a piece that's going to happen no matter what. They wanted to make sure that no revenue went to the criminal enterprise like gangs and cartels. They wanted to make sure that there was a prevention of diversion from legal states into other states, and we know that there is a lot of diversion, especially being monitored as it comes out of Colorado. And also looked at to make sure that it wasn't a cover for trafficking of other and harder drugs. And we have looked in the past and have seen this happen where they, in legalized states where they sell marijuana out of the front end of the business and harder drugs out of the back door of the business. So that has taken place as well. They wanted to make sure that violence and the use of firearms in the cultivation and the distribution wasn't proliferated during this time. And another thing that they wanted to do is make sure that drug driving and other adverse public health consequences didn't happen. And we know that drug driving in many cases has doubled or even more in states that have legalized whether that marijuana, whether that's been for medical or full recreational. We know that it's a concern. They don't want marijuana growing on public lands, and they also don't want the use or the possession of marijuana on federal properties. So those were the 8 criteria in the Cole memo, and those are the things that prosecutors were allowed to seek and go after, but with a growing opiate epidemic and the fact that there's very little funding involved, these things kind of kept on going anyway. But there are things that all of us need to be concerned about in this growing industry. Okay, let's move on to, if there's any questions, please pop them into the thing and we'll get to them later about it. But we're going to move on to the next thing that was just introduced on December 28th, and that is House Bill 457, which is drug treatment. And that's one of the ones that I'm talking about, where they're looking at options of addressing the heroin and the fentanyl and the carfentanil problem in the state of Ohio. And this bill is to require that an offender serving in a community-controlled sanction or parolee who fails a drug test for heroin, fentanyl, or carfentanil will be put in jail or admitted to a residential treatment program for up to 30 days. Well, there are some interesting things to think about it depending on who you are and where you are. The sponsor of that particular bill feels it's really important to get the people off the street and not selling or being involved in the use of these deadly drugs, and trying to eliminate overdoses and deaths by getting them into a place where they are safer, and hopefully then on into treatment. One of the things that we need to concern about this is that there's no real data to tell us how many individuals this may impact, because it's very specific about what drugs that they are talking about. So we really don't know what that means. And we also know that the jails are already at capacity and tend to be one of the biggest detox centers that we have right now, and may not, in fact, be the best place for detoxing an individual. So they really are trying to stop the overdoses. They're trying to get people into treatment, but some of the opponents of it really have come out very strongly, like the AULC. Did I say that right? I always get those mixed up. But anyway, they pretty much have said that it doesn't work. We have been putting people in jail for 40 years now around the drug crisis, and it hasn't solved anything. It doesn't eliminate the problem. Our jails are at capacity, they said. It doesn't help to put someone in an overcrowded jail. And likewise, our treatment centers. We don't have enough treatment centers to meet the demand of people who actually need this type of treatment. So there's those two sides. And then I'm looking for one of our colleagues who came off and talked about and brought up some interesting things that I think are important for us to think about. First of all, it's really important that we get people into services and into long-term treatment immediately. These drugs, heroin, fentanyl, and carfentanil, a 30-day fix in a residential treatment probably will not solve anything, and in fact could exacerbate the problem. So we need to look at a way of creating more ability to get people in long-term treatment. This bill, however, if all things are put in place and right, could help kickstart recovery and get people involved in their journey to whole wellness and recovery. But we also have the problem of overloaded jails, so we got to take a look at those things too. The big thing that was mentioned is that it eliminates the discretion to find the best individual response to someone's addiction. And I think that's the thing that's the most important thing to think about, is that every individual is different. Every disease model in this substance use disorder is different, and how people need to be treated and go about their own recovery cannot be a one-size-fits-all. So we need to be a little bit more holistic in how we do that. There was also from the field a belief that it gives people false hope, and that their family false hope that simply just by getting them into this 30-day treatment, and they will be taken care of and the problem will be over. We've heard this from our own individuals that we worked with, is that they somehow feel that we get them in treatment, we get them through the program, when they come out, they are well. And we know that's not true. It's a lifetime disease and one that will have to be managed for the entire life of that individual. The other piece of it is that we talked about the fact that it's just 3 drugs. What happens to cocaine? What happens to alcohol? What happens to those other drugs that are the main focus of a person's substance abuse disorder? Does that not count? Because that can cause just as much, as many problems in one's life and out into the world as the other drugs. So we need to start encouraging our legislators to think very more holistically about this problem, about that it's not just the drugs, it's about the disease and it's about the addiction, and we need to think more holistically how we do that. So that becomes our opportunity when we educate these individuals. It's not about a single drug, it's about the disease, and we need to be working with them on that to help them to educate them and help them to understand. Okay, the next thing that I thought was interesting that I brought up in this slow legislative news day was to talk about Philip Morris, who is now really, they're on our side according to them right now, in the sense that they have started a foundation for a smoke-free world. So if anybody contacts you about joining a foundation for a smoke-free world, it sounds really good, sounds like what we all want, but be a little bit concerned about it, because it is Philip Morris, and they are one of the largest cigarette manufacturers in the world, have been around for a long time. But over the new year, they made this big splash in the United Kingdom about how they were going to phase out the production of cigarettes, and they were going to start switching to a much better, much safer product called e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products. Well, I'm not quite sure that I'm going to get on the bandwagon with them on this one, but we need to be very concerned about what they're actually doing, because the bottom line is this is mass commercialization, and we know that commercialization is more focused on the bottom line than they are on public health and other things in most cases. This industry being one of them with their not stellar track record of honesty. So the industry has done a lot of research that says that these products, the e-cigarettes and the heated tobacco products, are much safer, and that we should be moving to them, and we need to get rid of the smoking environment. But in fact, it's industry-related research, and that's never one that's without a little bit of a bias. So I think it's important that we start advocating for research that will be objective research around what these products really are, but also to understand that nicotine, no matter what, is still harmful. It's still very addictive, and no matter what form you put it in, it will be addictive, it will be harmful, and it is one of those substances that rewires the brain of an adolescent. So we need to be on top of that and not have this be something that's promoted that will fall into the hands of young people. These products, we believe, should be still regulated in the same way that cigarettes are currently, and that they certainly shouldn't be for people, I think, under 21, and a lot of states are moving towards that, and we hope that that movement continues, that it doesn't go to young people under the age of 21, that there's restrictions on the advertising of them, the restrictions on how easily they can be purchased. There's a good campaign that actually promotes solid, good, evidence, research-based information about really what there is about that. And so we're concerned about that, and we really don't want people to get caught up in this feeling that they're moving to a more healthy, more safe environment by switching to these products. There simply isn't enough research, certainly on e-cigarettes, to know what kind of damage that they will cause. But we know that young people are starting to use them, and starting to use them a little bit more aggressively than they are regular cigarettes. So we need to be careful of that. I didn't know anything about the heat tobacco products, and probably many of you do, so I had to do a little research on exactly what that is. But what it is that you heat the product so that it's not in a combustible form, but you raise the temperature just enough so that it brings out the flavor and the aromas of these products, and there's a very kind of a, as I understand it, a very unique, sophisticated heating system that you can buy that's kind of high technology looking that will help get that right temperature there for that to happen. But it brings a vapor rather than a smoke, so that people are bringing in and inhaling a vapor as opposed to smoke. So that's where people are thinking that it's better. It's heats tobacco to temperatures that are around 350 degrees, as opposed to smoking, which is about 600 degrees, or Celsius rather, and that that then keeps the carcinogens and the other toxic pieces in cigarettes and in using tobacco down. But again, I'm not a firm believer of this. This needs to have a lot more research than what we have right now. And of course, youth are really good about taking anything that might be a little bit better than something else and making it in such a way that it's not as good. So there's a new dangerous trend now called dripping on that. And dripping is being used by young people, where it takes the normal e-cigarette and uses that slow release of the liquid from a wick and puts it onto really hot atomizer that will expose the user to higher levels of nicotine and to more harmful non-toxins, nicotine non-toxins like formaldehyde and other carcinogens. So again, young people can find a way to get the bigger hit, the bigger thrill off of doing most anything, so we need to be looking forward to it. Just as I was walking in here, and I got an email about a new campaign that's coming out, so I can't report on it, being I will digest that and get it into the e-news and then perhaps in this webinar next month. But it talks about a campaign that tells young people not to do anything, not to do anything. So we'll be looking through this campaign to see how it's presented and what will it do. But I think that needs to be our mantra to our young people, is that, if you do a little bit of this, a little bit of pot, a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of tobacco, it's all fine, as long as you don't do too much. But I think we need to send a very clear message to our young people who are under the age of 21 that all of these drugs play with the mechanics of their brains, and if they want to achieve their life the way that they were created and intended to achieve it, that these drugs don't help them get there. So we'll dig into that, and we'll know a little bit more about that. Are we into questions? Do we have any questions? Well, I'll take it one more slide. Talk about questions. We have an opportunity, as you know, as we're getting ready to roll out the fact that we have a gubernatorial campaign coming up. We sit on a coalition of alcohol and prevention, treatment, recovery, and mental health prevention, treatment, and recovery statewide organizations called the Coalition for Healthy Communities. And together we work to figure out how we can change the environment at the state level. We are looking to put together some questions for candidates coming up. Very quickly, some of the very broad questions we thought is, what do they know about prevention? We'd like to know that. We'd like to know what priority prevention will have in their administration, and how we can help them move towards that goal of prevention in their administration. So those are some of the things that we thought about. But we really look forward to you helping us with additional questions that we can get to the candidates, so we can sort of understand where they are in their understanding of this, and then help them to fully understand the impact of our field and what we need to do to make sure that our citizens are not moving towards the abuse of these particular substances. So we look forward to your input on that, and we will help educate the candidate, no matter who they are, to make sure that whatever the outcome is of the election, that we have a solid presence in the next administration.
Thank you very much, Marcie. And on that note, we're going to be sharing in the next few weeks during our SPCA e-news as well as at the SPCA meeting on January 16th information about the upcoming March Legislative Day, where you can also have a participating role in asking some of our current locally elected leadership here in Ohio some of your questions. And so that will be forthcoming, and I encourage you to kind of be more educated about some of the topics she's talked about today. Marcie, we did have a question from Evie with Drug-Free Stark County. She wanted to know if hookah would be classified as a heated tobacco product. Is that within that family?
I think, yes, I think it would be put in that family as well. I do. So, yeah.
I know that we've connected a few different communities with some environmental scan templates and things over the last few months related to vape shops, connected to e-cigarettes. One of the things that we would be really interested in seeing are the results of some of those community scans. We certainly know what it looks like here in the Columbus area, but in some of the more rural communities and some of the more suburban outlying sites, it would be very interesting if you'd be willing to share with us some of what you're seeing and let us be able to inform some of the decisions and the conversations that we're having here with various committees and various officials. So I would encourage you, email me. You know where to find me, guys. For the last question that we had come in was just about best way to stay updated with some of the ongoing pieces of marijuana. I think our legislative alerts are a good way, but Marcie, do you have some other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I will try to keep abreast of those in the legislative updates that go out weekly. There will be a section every week about marijuana. I would encourage you to go to the website of to the medical marijuana website in the state of Ohio, because they're always keeping everything updated there. And I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me to roll right off my tongue, and I should. It is medicalmarijuana.ohio.gov. medicalmarijuana.ohio.gov. And that is very important to go there, because they keep that updated very, very, very well. And we will stay on top of it here. So it's important for us to make sure that you know what's going on, because together we're all going to have to figure out how to deal with this changing environment.
Thank you, everybody. As always, it's a pleasure. We wish we could see you all in person. Stay tuned. You'll see forthcoming information not only about these legislative updates, but about, again, the legislative day scheduled for March 21st here in the Columbus area. We will be offering some travel stipends to assist communities with that as well. So we really are encouraging you to get involved and be part of the conversation. If you have any questions, you know how to reach us. You can always call in. Our number here again is 614-540-9985. You can ask for Marcie. You can ask for myself. And again, we wish you guys a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.